Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Miss Marvel. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, this episode covers a bit of history that I'm still not well versed on. I know some things I've tackled it a little bit. Like I know there's a Doctor Who episode, I want to say in season 11, was it? Maybe 11? Yeah, I think it was season 11. With, like, Yaz's grandmother and stuff. That, like, I knew that, so I know that kind of touches on that. That was a very, like, smaller scale story with, like, Partition being, like, a background thing. And this kind of does that to an extent. Because we get introduced to Aisha as she's running. Because I guess, like... Well, because this is after she's already gotten to Bengal, so I think they've been living here for a while, and then everything started going down, and, you know, the narrative that kind of got created. Because it's like, right, it's supposed to be like, we're all in this together, no matter what our circumstances, we should be united, but it's like, right, we're letting the British kind of divide us, essentially. And this is when Aisha met Hassan, and it's like, right, not the greatest star, but kind of a bumpy star. But I think she saw something in him. Like, the fact is that he was someone, like, ready to kind of stand up for change and be like, no, like, we can't, like, go on without a fight. Don't take our reluctance to... I'm going to butcher his words, but it was like, yeah, take our, like, trying to go for a peaceful route. Don't take that as weakness or something of that ilk. But, kind of when she was alone, because she talks about it later, she thought all the other clandestine had died. Like, it's been years, and they were separated. She's just been on the run. Because I guess at no point she decided to go home, because it's like, right, what was the point of going home without her friends by her side? Because the episode never covers it, because it's like, right, because when we got introduced to Aisha and all of them, what was that, episode 3, they were already, in this world, they were already looking for the bangle and trying to get home, and Aisha already has a bangle, so this takes place years after that. But I was like, oh, we never found out why they are here, but I'm like, right, I think, if I remember correctly, based on what Najma said, I think they were exiled here. We never actually found out what they did, like whether they were criminals. Because that's what part of me was wondering, like, maybe that's why Aisha kind of connected with Hassan, because she may, and this is just pure speculation on one part. I don't think they went into a lot of details about that, and I don't know if we ever will kind of find out what they exactly did to get exiled, but maybe they were kind of revolutionaries in their own regard. So the fact is that maybe they come from a similar situation, so maybe that's why Aisha, like, really kind of connected. Because, I mean, it's like, it's not even technically, because it wasn't her, like, battle, wasn't her issue, but they still kind of took part in it, because this kind of became their temporary home when they got exiled here. And the only real connect, because it's like, right, this is where we're kind of laying low until we get what we need, and it was always just a means to an end, especially to Najma, but it's like, to Aisha, it became so much more, because her and Hassan fell in love, and they ended up having Sana. And eventually, and obviously that aspect of, like, right, that divide of them being Muslim, of how that ended up ostracizing them to an extent, because it's like, right, no one will buy anything from, like, because I think Aisha was selling flowers, like, no one would buy from her because of her being Muslim, because it's like, oh, like, because someone that was a friend of theirs is trying to sell stuff, but it's like, oh, we're not going to accept your charity, because it's like, right, because we're Muslims, we're kind of looked at a certain way. It's like getting kicked out of our own home, essentially, with everything that was going on, and that, and once again, I do forgive me. Once again, it is a part of history I know next to nothing about, So like I said, I've gotten peeks into it here and there, but I think, bluntly speaking, I don't fully grasp. Like, I grasped the gravity of it and what it meant, like, people's homes being burnt down, being ostracized. Once again, just for being, a particular, I think on any side, that divide it created. Because the whole point was, like, that was kind of what, I think that's what they were kind of saying, that's what the British were doing. They were trying to divide and conquer. And it's basically that sad thing of, like, it's almost like the thing that Nakia talked about, what was it, in episode 3 when damage control rolled around. She was like, yeah, they're basically doing the thing of turning Muslims against Muslims. It's almost like that particular situation. It's like the British were kind of doing that to everyone in India. It's like, right, you're the divide and making it, it's like, oh, like you're either you're like, oh, watch out for these people who are coming in and taking your home from you. It was kind of that type of mentality. At least that's my understanding of it. And it was interesting because obviously Hassan was frustrated, but it was interesting because you didn't see Aisha have that same frustration. I think it's because, once again, maybe it's just because of her, because she is someone who has kind of a outside and inside perspective, because she's not from this world, coming to this world and being treated, that way. I think maybe that kind of lent itself to that, like why maybe she might have had a little bit of a different perspective on things, and why she, it's like, because I guess it's like, right, this is someone we know, this person would never kind of ostracize us, look down upon us just because of our differences or whatever. But then you have the situation where Najma shows up, and it's like, right, we've been looking years for you. It's like, well, we're ready to go home, but for Aisha, it's like, I don't want to, though. And she can't really express that, like, this is what they've been working towards. Even before she met Hassan, like, that was their goal. Like, it's like, yeah, this is our temporary home. We're here. We're avoiding, because it's like, right, we're caught up in the middle of partition and everything, but it's like, we're only here because we're trying to get home, and the means to do that is here. So it makes you wonder, the person who had the bangle, was it someone from their world that was like, once again, probably won't ever really go into the details of that. But she was torn between the home that she was trying to get back to for so long, plus the home she found here. Because I guarantee you, maybe she knew that, like, right, I can't ask my husband and child, I mean, it's in particular my husband, to leave the world that he knows, the home that he knows. I mean, she kind of ended up having to, but it's like, right, at the least, even if we're leaving this home, we're together. Because she probably also doesn't, well, because I think later on she said it won't work. So I guess she knew going through the portal was never going to be an option. Like trying to tear down the veil and go through was never going to be an option. Maybe the reason why she knows is because maybe she did try. I mean, maybe she tried to go home, but it didn't work. And so she kind of just gave up on it. But now it's like, oh, I have a family now. I don't want to take the chance I might leave them behind, because maybe, like, because they're clandestine, like if they go through and it works, it's one thing. But her husband is human, and it's like she wouldn't want to divide her family like that. So she just wanted to leave. Not only because of everything that was going down, I mean, it helped. It kind of gave her extra motive to leave with everything going on. But her husband was reluctant to leave because it's like, yeah, this is my family's home, and but for her, it's like, as long as we're together, that's kind of, we will carry our memories with us. And still, the heartbreaking element of just seeing people packed on a train, everyone's scared, running for their lives, trying to get themselves and their families. This might be the last train, because who knows what could happen when tomorrow comes around. So everyone's trying to leave as fast as they can. And for Najma to catch up to him and kill Aisha, it's like, wow, her knowing that, like, right, that's why I figured that was kind of where this was going. And it's like, right, you turned your back on us. Like, how could you do that? And she never really gave Aisha an opportunity to explain, but she was just saying, like, right, it's not going to work. But Najma's like, no, I don't care. I'm trying to get home, because we know they've been here longer than that, because they said that they've been here at least 100 years. So that put it at about, like, what? That put it at is all that roughly, like, maybe 80-ish years ago, give or take. So, and they've been here, so like they were here at the bare minimum, like at least 20 years before that. So it's like, no, I've been waiting years on. He's like, no, I'm not going to wait years just to get back home, because who knows what's waiting for them. Like, maybe they have family back in that world too. I mean, like, whether it be like their parents or families of their own. I mean, I'm assuming Aisha didn't. I mean, maybe like all she had was Sana and Hassan in this world. I mean, maybe that applies just even in that world. That's all they had. And I think that is the irony behind it all. That Kamala points out later on, it's like, right, all Aisha wanted was to stay with her family, and you kind of took that from her. And it's like, right, her dying, and because the what you seek is seeking you. She got that from Hassan because I think it's from a poem that he had like recited to her like earlier on when like they like after they had first met, and when it was all said and done, like she could hear her daughter crying out because her and Hassan had gotten separated. She had showed Hassan kind of who and what she was to some extent. She showed the Bengals like, right, you always said I was magic, but it's like I don't want our family torn apart. And he's like, we won't, because she's like, if something happens, I need you to stay with Sana. And but they got separated, and so she, I guess, with the little bit of Nor that she had, she was able to, like, just because I guess she put her everything into it, she tapped into the bangle and the bangle activated, and it turns out this whole thing is a giant time loop. Kamala's always meant to come back in time and save her grandmother because she was like, no, Aisha, you gotta hold on. It's like, you're the one that says, it's like, no, Sana's gonna be okay because you're here. Because I think when she saw Kamala, she saw like a younger, she's like, oh no, well, you're an older Sana. I think that's kind of like, and she's like, it's kind of sad to know that. It's like, right, you just met your great grandmother. You didn't even get an opportunity to really talk to her. You had to watch her die. And so she finds Sana, and using her power, she's like, I don't have stars, but she tries to kind of light her path with those, the energy. But I think at one point, at first I was like, oh, did Sana, like, did the crystal, like, the projection or whatever, like, break? But it seems like Sana actually, I guess, maybe, this is me, like, either in that moment, because being around the Bengal, maybe being around Kamala, just it being an innate part of her, just for a little bit, she was able to tap into the, because the bracelets, the bangle isn't what gives you the power. It's already there in you. It's just the bangle helped bring it out. So maybe just in that moment of just being scared or whatever, she saw that power and just instinctually like manifested. She created stars herself, I think. It's my understanding. Maybe she took Kamala's energy and kind of shifted it into stars, and it led her to her dad. And in that moment, Kamala warps back to the present day, because I was wondering about that last episode. I was like, it didn't seem like that was just like a vision, like, oh, you're kind of like a Christmas story of like, oh, you're kind of a fly on the wall, kind of like a ghost. It's like, no, it's like, it seems like you're legitimately there. So, but the portal opens, well, the veil, but you can't go through, and that's why I'm wondering, is that how it's designed? It's like, oh, if you get ostracized from this world, you probably need something special beyond just the bangle. Like, trying to go through, you will be ripped to pieces because you're trying to, like, cross that, like, dimensional barrier. I mean, to be fair, like, once that energy flows over into this world, it was going to erase this world, so maybe the same thing applies here. Kind of like, if you've seen Superman and Lois this past season, the barrier between both universe, the Bizarro world and this world, like, obviously, like, when you go through it, it can, like, rip into you if you don't have the proper, like, power and protection. Like, how opening that portal basically killed people. So it's like probably all that raw energy, even for the clandestine, is too much for them, and it burns them, well, crystallizes them and then kills them. But for Kamala, it's like, right, you took Aisha away from her son. That's all she wanted. You have Cameron, so like, don't do this. Like, don't abandon him. Don't make him an orphan. But for her, it's like, the only way I can make this right. She's like, I abandoned my son. But Kamala's like, you still have an opportunity. But despite all that, she sacrificed herself to close the veil, because it's like, right, am I going to leave my son all alone? And it's like, but if this stays open, it's like, right. Because now she realizes, like, right, now I understand. I was so ready to get back home, and I was just so angry about my son trying to do the right thing that I lashed out at him, and I did the exact same thing to Aisha. Like, I didn't ever once put myself in her shoes, because all I wanted was to go home. And it's just like, it's funny how time wasn't enough, because she was still so focused on home that it's not until Kamala said what she said, and I think it really sat on her being like, oh, because I don't think she experienced what Kamala experienced. I think only she did. But to know that that's how that whole seek what you seek, like that, I guess it was like in that moment, like maybe Aisha had like kind of imprinted that on the bangle, and it was kind of almost like a spell that was kind of activated when Najima like struck the bangle. in that moment. Maybe it was something inside of Kamala that hit, because it's like, what has she been seeking this entire time? Understanding herself a little bit more, trying to find answers to all of this herself, kind of find her identity. But luckily they were able to get people out of there in time, when Najma ends up sacrificing herself, and then she passes something on the camera. And I guess in that moment, like all of her, like maybe in that moment, all the Nor that she had or whatever, she sent it to Cameron in with her voice, and that moment you saw his hand glow. You're like, oh, because once again, if his mom had thought, well, if Kamala could do it, then that means Cameron, because he was born in this world, has that potential as well. I mean, I think it's probably less likely now, like her, because they haven't used the bangle, and her grandmother Sana hasn't really pushed with it, so she probably can't summon it up. But I think it's still there in her grandmother and her mother. They just haven't accessed it. But I do like Muniba being like, Kamala's not picking up. It's like, well, if you're on the same family plan, you could like do the whole track my phone. It's like, because her mom was like, oh, why don't you like put a chip in her? Like, it's like, that's a dog, Mom, and Kamala's a human. But if it was legal, I definitely would have chipped her a long time ago. But then it's like, wait, so there's kind of like a parent spyware? And her nephew is kind of like, oh, yeah. And he's like, and she's like, why didn't anyone say anything sooner? Why am I only just finding out about it? I thought that was adorable. And then she happens to see Kamala do her thing, and it's like, wait, the light girl, that was you? And it's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, our family's magical. And Kamala hands Sana the picture of her mom and dad, because they had to leave, Aisha's the only one that had that one picture of them. So the only thing she had was the drawings and her memories of what she could remember of her mom. To be fair, she was a little girl at the time. And so that means the world to her, like, you know, having this physical picture of her mom. I thought it was this beautiful thing of, now it's like, her mom, like now Kamala's mom is trying to understand everything, and her thinking, was it Kareem or Red Dagger? Which it does seem like there are others. Waleed was the only one there, but maybe the others are scattered around. I thought it was interesting because he's like, yeah, if you ever need any help, and you just call me. He's like, to be fair, the U.S. government's got a couple warrants out for me, so I wonder, has he done stuff stateside as well? I mean, dealing with the unseen, I guess, takes them internationally. That's why I'm like, maybe Waleed isn't the only one. They're probably like, maybe they're the only branch of the Red Daggers here in Karachi, but like maybe they're scattered all around the world, maybe type of situation. Kind of a secret, society organization. So, but I thought it was a beautiful resolution all around, because I thought, oh, this is neat. Because I was like, well, I know there's at least one more episode, so I thought it was interesting, this setup of making it so like, well, this whole process, made kind of. It is beautiful how, Kamala's story of trying to find out about the past, discovering so much about herself, kind of, for one, brought her mother back to, brought Muniba back to Sana, and now it's like all of three of them together at the end like that. I was just like, oh, that's actually really beautiful and really touching. That, because Sana was like, yeah, like, maybe this was all kind of like fate and destiny to kind of like bring you back to me. Because, Kamala's like, wait, that was you? It's like, oh yeah, your mom was quite the rebel. She ran away when she was 17, kind of doing her own thing. It's like, how have I never known about this? Like, because you've never bothered to ask. It's like, yeah, me and your dad had plenty of adventures before you. But obviously, they wouldn't trade anything in the world the time they have with, like, obviously Kamala and her brother. But she realizes, like, right, I held on a little too tight to you. But then, like, Sana apologizes because she's like, yeah, because she felt like she didn't hold on tight enough to Muniba. But Muniba's like, yeah, but I also couldn't see what you wanted me to see. And now she can, because she realizes, like, oh man, like, my mom isn't the crazy person I thought she was. Like, she was right about the lights and all of this stuff. So, but it's time to go home. And back home, Cameron ends up going to Bruno. And it's like, he's like, right, things are kind of awkward. Oh, right, because she ran from home because he was like, oh, she's like, Bruce Springfield is like, no, for Bon Jovi. I was like, right, of course it's Bon Jovi. I still think that's such a cute thing. But, right, it's like, oh, he's like, you got a poster of Nikola Tesla. It's like, oh, so you must be a car guy. And he's almost like, yeah, no wonder we never really hung out. He's like, let's start over. My name's Cameron. It's like, I'm Bruno. He's like, Oh my god, I genuinely thought the entire time your name was Brian. He was like, no, don't worry about it. It never bothered me like the first like 4 times you got my name wrong. I'm like, oh, he was just that abs. He wasn't being a dick about it. He legitimately just thought your name was Brian. I was like, even I was starting to think like, I was like, there's no way he's doing it. He's got to be doing it on purpose. You know, it does seem like it was genuinely an accident. So I thought that was interesting. But sadly, Cameron doesn't know that his mom is gone, and Kamal is going to have to break that news to him. But Bruno's like, no, like, I'll help you out. We'll figure out, like, you know, because damage control is after you. Going to the extremes that they are. Once again, it's the most background thing, like, because I mean, obviously, we've only just tackled, like, Sword to some extent with WandaVision, so we haven't really circled back to them yet. But then, like, damage control, once again, they were like a small bit at the beginning of Homecoming. So we haven't found that one. And even then, once again, that was 2012, because that was that part of Homecoming was, you know, after Avengers. And it's like, so that's like over 10 years ago. And a lot of power dynamics have changed, you know, with the whole shield situation, like I said, with Sword, with now this. So kind of, I mean, to be fair, I guess it's like, right, the fact is they're going so hard in the paint about powered people, it's just kind of like, I mean, I know S.H.I.E.L.D. had its moments, but I can't really say that. I mean, because it's like, well, because we do have a legit direct parallel, because, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. dealt with, like, powered people, too. Like, we've seen that in the show, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so, but, like, they go so hard in the paint like they are, I mean, in their mind, it's probably like, no, we're going about this the right way. Kind of makes you look like the dicks in this situation, but we'll see how things kind of play out. Next episode is the finale / season finale. I think it seems like most of these shows are going to be like one-offs. So I think this is labeled as a mini series, but I guess it just depends on what stories they want to tell. Because obviously this is just setting up Kamala's story, and you know, obviously the question also has been like, okay, so are we going to get like will we get a Monica Rambeau appearance? If anything, you probably think like a Carol Danvers, especially just, I think that would be the most, because Kamala is such a huge fan. Which I should also talk about it. I do like that the necklace that's her name, basically it broke, and it's basically the lightning bolt symbol that is her, it's not a one-to-one, I mean, the comparison I was thinking of is like, oh yeah, it kind of reminds me of, Punisher, how, at least in the TV show, I don't know if this is applicable to the comic, but in TV show, the skull that he uses as his emblem, it's based on the X-ray of his own skull. Is what that comes down to. So, like, yeah, it's almost interesting, like, symbolic, like, oh yeah, the lightning bolt's just like her emblem is just her name. But it's just like, yeah, the chain was broken, and just, yeah, I was like, oh, that's a nice little touch. It makes it even more symbolic that ends up being like her signature, and with like it having that, because I don't think we've seen like I mean, maybe there's pictures and stuff like that. I haven't really looked. We'll probably get a better look next episode, because obviously she's going to get like the traditional like Miss Marvel outfit. I'm curious, is that symbol going to be on the front of it now, or will that be something she ends up adding later, kind of adding her own little touch to it? But I'm very excited to see what happens in the finale, season finale, whatever it ends up being. Because it seems like damage control seems to be the main threat right now, after they're coming after Cameron, and probably how that whole thing gets potentially resolved. And because it's like, right, this is like a government organization that's coming after you, but they're causing a lot of mass destruction, and it's going to cause like that the publicity, that the terrible publicity is going to like be a major backlash against them. So you think we'll have to wait and see how that plays out, because I'm curious to see what ends up happening. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good